Thank you so much for inviting me for giving this webinar on professional and personal development after and through adversity or setbacks. I'm truly honored to tell you something about the science that deals with this subject, which is called post-traumatic growth. The word trauma in the word post-traumatic growth may sound intense, but trauma in the science of PTG actually means any setback that feels as profound to someone. I'm going to share my story with you using a PowerPoint presentation, but before I do, a word about how I came to a topic like post-traumatic growth. In fact, most people are still very unfamiliar with it, and that's a great pity. For me, PTG was also a very unknown concept until about 50 years ago. And how did we get there? And we, in this case, is Anja Jonkind, my colleague, and me, Vonk. And we have together a company which is called Et Emergo. And Et Emergo is a Latin name, and it comes from Luctor et Emergo. And that stands for struggle and come out on top. So our company is called Et Emergo, and that's actually what we do, letting people come out on top, especially when they're dealing with all kinds of misery. My colleague Anja Jonkind has been doing that for about 40 years. And I learned that profession from her about 25 years ago, and I started working with it in my own practice in 2006. And with actually very, very positive results. Even people who had already all sorts of different types of counseling but still complaints really became stronger through PTG coaching. In the end, that also led, strangely enough, to a lot of frustration, because what I noticed is that people who actually had all kinds of psychological problems and had learned a lot of it had to deal with an unpleasant approach when they returned to their work environment. That there was discrimination, stigmatization, being belittled or patronized. And at one point, I had an evaluation interview with someone who learned a lot of his misery. And this person hadn't gotten a new job. And the only reason was that his employer was afraid of a relapse. Well, he had developed himself immensely through the misery, and in addition, he was extremely well suited for the job. I was furious and thought, that's it. And I went back to studying. I really wanted to know how it's possible that in science and in public opinion, it's often assumed that people remain vulnerable or weak after misery. I read my way through all kinds of scientific literature, and then I came across the phenomenon post-traumatic growth. So what my colleague and I had been doing for a long term turned out to be an area of science. And now PTG has been an area of science for about 30 years, and it's still very unknown. Our mission, therefore, is to make post-traumatic growth a more familiar term than post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. And the illustration you see here beautifully shows what post-traumatic growth is all about. On the left side of the illustration, it's all black and gray, and it's rough, and there is thunder, dire misery. And then there you see a woman pulling away the curtain. And with that, the right side of the illustration comes into view. On the right side of the illustration, life looks a lot more beautiful, even though there may still be some clouds on the horizon. And this is truly possible after all kinds of misery. Is that easy? No, not at all. We always say post-traumatic growth is a wonderful, hopeful, positive thought, but misery is not nice, and it's never going to be. Misery is misery. We will go further in this webinar with these contents. First of all, we will do some more introduction, and after that, we will go deeper into the phenomenon post-traumatic growth. I think I addressed the most information on this page, except that I did scientific research on PTG and that research resulted in a scientific publication. Moreover, I am an EMCC Master Practitioner Coach. I wrote 3 books on PTG with Anja. We have developed e-learnings, run training courses, and we make the podcast Gifts Wrapped in Barbed Wire. And as mentioned earlier, it's our mission to make PTG a better known concept than PTSD. Okay, let's start with the origins of PTG. The research area actually came about by accident after surveys of people involved in the sinking of the ferry Herald of the Enterprise. That was a ferry sailing from mainland Europe to England, and due to a human error, the bow door failed to close and the ship sank when it was less than a mile from shore. The disaster took the lives of 193 people, and 459 people survived the disaster. All of them had experienced severe trauma and were followed as a group for years by researchers. After a number of years, one researcher thought, could it also be possible that people experienced something positive as a result of a disaster? And one question was added to the questionnaire. Did the disaster also give you something positive? Much to the researchers' surprise, it was found that 43% of the survivors who participated in the study reported that their lives had become more positive. The researchers experienced this as a shocking result. They had expected that only a few survivors would have become more positive. And so the fact that it turned out to be nearly 50% was a shocking result to them. Curiosity about the phenomenon of growth through adversity has been aroused by this discovery. Thus, in the early 1990s, the field of research emerged and a scientific definition was established by psychologists Richard Tedeschi and Lawrence Calhoun. They defined post-traumatic growth as positive psychological changes that can occur as a result of struggling with highly challenging life crises. And there are 3 parts important in this definition. First, positive psychological changes. People truly experience greater satisfaction or happiness, or they are happier with themselves. Second, struggling. A difficult period or trauma never creates growth. The struggling process does. So that struggling process is usually incredibly unpleasant, but also helpful. And at last, highly challenging life crisis. And this is interesting because this is a subjective thing. For example, for one person, being laid off may feel like trauma. And for another one, it may not feel like trauma at all. So, what is post-traumatic growth? Actually, and you can see that in this illustration. You can see in this illustration 4 possibilities that people can fall into when they are facing or having faced misery. First, it's succumbing, really breaking down from misery. Next, you have survival. Then you are in a kind of permanent survival mode. And third is recovery, and the fourth is growth. And that growth you see in this illustration goes beyond the basics. You see in this illustration a man falling down, and that may give the impression that it is about single events. And that's not the case, because it can also be about multiple events, such as being bullied or discriminated. Strange enough, properly considered, this illustration is wrong. Why? Because there are really only 2 outcomes when we experience misery. Either use a comp or you grow from it. And we have known this for a long time from all kinds of religious stories, mythological stories, and legends. And yet we have added two more options, those of survival and recovery. And we think that has to do with the fact there is often a lot of focus on the complaints when people have to deal with misery. There is also a lot of focus on diagnosis those complaints, and there is a protocol on how to reduce those complaints. So the complaints are very much the focus. That is completely different in post-traumatic growth, because there the human being and his or her qualities and abilities are the focus, without denying or downplaying the pain. People's complaints are taken very seriously, but the person and his or her qualities, strengths, talents, and capacities are the focus. If you focus mainly on the complaints, then you actually do people a huge disservice. And this is shown very nicely in the following video.
There's something I want to tell you about the stress and how we have to look at stress, okay? And I think it's an important thing because many people have told me from my lectures it's the one thing they remember, okay? I was sitting in a dentist's office and looked at an article that said, how do lobsters grow? Well, I don't care how lobsters grow, but I was interested in it. And it points out that a lobster is a soft, mushy animal that lives inside of a rigid shell. That rigid shell does not expand. Well, how can the lobster grow? Well, as the lobster grows, that shell becomes very confining. Right? And the lobster feels itself under pressure and uncomfortable. It goes under a rock formation to protect itself from predatory fish, casts off the shell, and produces a new one. Well, eventually, that shell becomes very uncomfortable as it grows, right? Back under the rocks. And the lobster repeats this numerous times. The stimulus for the lobster to be able to grow is that it feels uncomfortable. Right? Now, if lobsters had doctors, they would never grow, because as soon as the lobster feels uncomfortable, goes to the doctor, gets a Valium, gets a Percocet, feels fine, never gets off its shell. So I think that we have to realize that times of stress are also times that are signals for growth. And if we use adversity properly, we can grow through adversity.
So now it's very clear that we can grow from adversity, but it's not going without ups and downs. And that is what you can see in this illustration. And we call it the stronger by misery wavelet. Grow always comes with ups and downs, and it's important to realize that. We often hear that people are afraid of a relapse. But with this wavelet in mind, only one reaction is possible. There is no need to be afraid. During a PTG process, you can be certain that there will be a relapse, because this is normal in a learning process. Think of a baby learning to walk. It's with trial and error. What is hopeful and interesting is that a down a little further in time is higher than an up that was earlier in time. So, when you are afraid of relapses, that is a poor breeding ground for growth. Recovering comes with ups and downs, and that is normal and even desirable. And what is interesting is that your recovery and growth process is faster if you let the downs be there too. Surrender to them. Surrender is incredibly important. In the following video, you can see that your process even goes faster with ups and downs. It's a short clip, only 4 seconds, so I'll show it twice. Okay, we now know that grow is possible after misery. But what does PTG provide? And you can look at that or describe the grow in several ways. And what we are covering here today is the scientific way of looking. A lot of research has already been done on PTG. For example, if you type into Google Scholar post-traumatic growth, you will get more than 700,000 hits. Part of the science field has explored what growth can look like, and that has revealed that there are 5 sub-areas. And we will do a short 3-minute break where you can fill in a PTG questionnaire. We will use the international most widely used scientific PTG questionnaire. And you can go to our website by using the URL and fill in this short questionnaire. You will normally get the results within a few minutes. Because there are a lot of you, it may take a little longer. After a few minutes, I will tell you a bit more about the questionnaire. Okay, I hope you all were successful in filling in the form. If not, please take a picture of this sheet and maybe you can try it later. And now we're going further and I will tell you something about the 5 sub-areas. The questionnaire actually measures in which sub-areas there is growth, and those are the 5 areas below. First of all, changes in relationship with others. The value that someone attaches to a relationship with family and friends can change. By achieving P2G, people can, for example, open up more, develop more empathy, or pay much more attention to others. It can also mean that someone becomes clearer and are more selective concerning family and friends. This means that some connections can fade, while others grow stronger. Secondly, experiencing new possibilities. People who experience this area of PTG often broaden their horizons. They start working on change life goals and or learn new skills. They can develop new interests and engage in new activities, for example, another hobby. It also often happens that someone starts looking for a new job, which may even involve going into a complete different direction. Third, experiencing personal strength. People who experience more personal strength automatically increase their self-confidence, resilience, wisdom, authenticity, and seniority, and gain more insight into their strengths and limitations, talents, and pitfalls. Changes in religion, spirituality, or philosophy of life. People become more interested in spirituality or religion, or they start living according to a new philosophy of life. It may also be that they become less interested in one of the aspects mentioned, because, for example, they have held on it too much. They gain a changed insight into what is truly important to them in life. And now the last one, changes in the appreciation and perception of life. People who experience this choose to live a healthier life or enjoy the little things in life more. They start setting other priorities. They can also experience life in a more happy, interesting, or another positive way. Some people who experience PTG experience it in all areas, others in one or a few. It also depends on how you stood in life before that difficult period. For example, if you already value family and friends very much, you probably won't start to value them even more during the recovery and growth process. Well, and then we are going to see what yields in the daily life. And you can see this in this table. On the left side of this table, you can see the pre-PTG era. And on the right side, how you can actually look at the world with the science of PTG from now on. On the left side, you see all sort of terms, like that people assume that you will never be the same again, and you will therefore be less resilient for the rest of your life. Being a loser, that you will always have to monitor your boundaries, in a kind of survival mode, and you have to deal with stigma, and you are weak, and that your development is at standstill, sometimes even declining. If you look at this table, you might think that we are overdoing. I don't know exactly how it is in China, but here in Northern Europe in particular, and also in North America, it's unfortunately not like that. We often notice that people with whatever mental health complaints are pushed into that left-hand column. And so they are actually identified with their complaints. Well, and on the right-hand side, you see what happens when people receive help based on the principles of PTG and also be approached that way. And actually, the essential difference in this is that you look at misery as a development process, not a fine development process, definitely not, but it can be done. So then you come out of the misery with more resilience than ever before. You are a powerful person. You don't deal with your limits in the sense of monitoring boundaries, but you will explore and push your limits. This is very often a subtle difference. But monitoring your boundaries comes from fear, and exploring and pushing boundaries comes from curiosity. Well, and instead of surviving, you then go live life to the fullest, but with conscious choices. and you are valued instead of stigmatized. And weak becomes powerful and vulnerability. We always say if people are only powerful, that is not strength. You can only be truly powerful if the weak side is also allowed to be there. And in this right-hand column, you can also see that your development does not stand still or go backwards, but that people can recognize and acknowledge their known and unknown talents and use them. And now the important question, how can you achieve post-traumatic growth? I could talk about that for days, but unfortunately we don't have that time. Sometimes we are asked whether we have a step-by-step plan or a treatment plan to achieve or help achieve PTG. Fortunately, there isn't. It requires a different process for each individual. And that's exactly what's so special about achieving PTG. There is no step-by-step plan or treatment plan, because the main focus is on the individual and his talents, qualities, and strengths. They are not the same for anyone. We can't discuss a timetable with you, but we can name a number of topics that are important. And the first one is vitality and order. Why is that so important? Well, it's so important because what people underestimate is that if you experience misery in your life, it also has a great impact on your body. Certain organs in your head even literally get smaller. So, for example, you can no longer concentrate. But also that sometimes people just get really physical complaints. So misery affects your whole body, all your systems. It is always a good idea to take good care of your body. But in times of misery, it's so much more important. So eat healthy, keep moving, drink a lot of water, seek relaxation, even if you don't even feel like it. It can already help a lot. The second is focus on quality and strength. This is hugely important throughout the process. Don't just focus on your complaints, but rather on your strengths. Important in this is also to look closely at what steps have already been taken forward. Even if sometimes feel like you haven't moved forward at all yet, if you look over your shoulder, you will see that you have. And all those small steps are important. And because in those small steps, you can also discover where your quality and strengths lie. And yes, it's a much finer way in terms of development than mainly looking at all the complaints you still have. Then the third. Simply knowing that such a thing as post-traumatic growth exists and what it exactly is can help to realize PTG. That can be an inspiration. Hope springs to life. And when you know that something like PTG exists, it gives hope. So knowing that such a thing exists can help. But it's important to introduce it at the right time. When someone is still in the midst of misery, introducing PTG is usually not a good idea. Another part which is super important, which is at the next dot, is that you digest emotions. That sounds a bit crazy, but what we mean by that is emotions have to be digested just like food. Suppose you eat a few sandwiches and it doesn't digest in your body. The whole thing clogs up and at some point you get really sick. Well, it's pretty much the same with emotions. And therefore, it's very important to digest your emotions. Well, and with such metaphor, you can also invite people or yourself to do that anyway. Also important is the attitude of the environment, and that is also one of the reasons why we spread this story a lot. If the environment starts approaching people who are or having been struggling as pathetic, then they also are pathetic persons. If you start approaching people as human beings who happen to be struggling for a while or have been for a long time, just as full human beings, then they also feel normal. And that makes a big difference. The following one is surrender. Life is not always nice. We tend to fight that negative feeling, but then you only push it away. The key to recovery and possibly growth is surrendering to a situation that has already arisen. This means recognizing the misery and not denying or masking. You cannot do anything about something that supposedly is not there. Recognizing the problem creates the possibility of doing something. And by surrendering to it, you also activate positive creativity to solve, digest, change something. You can't handle something you don't accept or what is supposedly not there. The last one, search for help. Scrambling up from misery is a tough process that you ultimately have to do by yourself. But you don't have to do it alone. So seek help. People are very often happy to help you. Okay, if you want some more information about this subject, we wrote a book, and our first book is also translated into English. And we have also developed an e-learning that you can buy for only 39 euros, excluding VAT. You can also follow coaching, and sometimes only 2-hour coaching can help a lot. You can further find information on our website, and you can also mail us or call us. And now you can also ask your questions.
Hi, great. Thank you.
Hi.
Thank you for your wonderful presentation about PTG, post-traumatic growth, a new area for many people. Thank you very much. And we do see a lot of interest from the audience about PTG, and we have also collected some questions from them. And now let's move on to the Q&A. 我们非常感谢我们 Great 女士刚才精彩的演讲，然后现在我们进入问答环节。大家有问题的话，可以把你们的问题打在聊天框里，然后我们会在线然后回答大家的问题。好，第一个问题。Okay, so first question. Okay, I put it in the chat. The first question is, could you explain the difference between PTG and the resilience?
Yes, that's a very nice question. Yes, there are very familiar concepts, but also very different. When people have to deal with any kind of misery and they can use their resilience, they are, well, getting in their strengths, coming in their strengths quite, yeah, well, it's difficult, but they're coming in their strengths in a short time. And their view of the world will not change. And this is a very different thing when we have to deal with post-traumatic growth. When we have post-traumatic growth, something happens which is not fit in the worldview of someone. And after a very intense struggling process, their worldview will change a lot. And that's not the case when we have to do with resilience. So when I have it well, someone is here and it fell down, and when they come up again, that's resilience. And when they fall and they don't know how to deal with the problems they have, then they go seeking. There will be a great and difficult process, and they on another time, other moment, other place, they will come up again. So the difference is that they will have a totally different worldview after PTG, and that's not the case in resilience. And worldview means something they have, how they look at themselves, how they look at the world, what goals they have in the world, etc.
Can I have the understanding that resilience is part of the PTG?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. OK， 那希望这个刚刚的回答能让这位朋友满意啊。如果大家有其他的反馈的话，可以在聊天框里及时提出来。OK, thank you for your answer. Let's see the second question. The second question is, are there any practical methods that can help foster PTG in our daily lives?
Well, many people ask us for a sort of step-by-step plan, and that isn't. In my last slide, I said what helps to receive post-traumatic growth, to achieve post-traumatic growth. So any practical methods, it's very individual how people are reacting on emotions. A very practical thing is the last thing of only last one, not one of the last dots in the slide, surrender. Just surrender to what is going on. If you suppress your emotions, some people think that they are, they disappear, but they don't. So you have to surrender to a not nice period in your life.
Thank you. 那关于第二个问题就是有没有什么方法帮我们实现创伤后成长？那这个的话其实没有就是具体的这个一个步骤的，这样第一步、第二步、第三步这样，因为这个是非常因人而异、非常个人化的问题。特别是比如说你就是因为每个人他比如说应对一种情绪，可能一种悲伤情绪，每个人的反应都是不一样的。但是大家在要实现这个创伤后成长的话，你们都要说，首先你一定要去接受你当前所面对的这个状况，那不用去刻意的压制你这个情绪，那这样的话就是你就让那个情绪存在，你就去接受它，然后这种情况下，然后再可以一步步的实现这个创伤后成长。Okay, thank you. Let's see the third question. Yeah, what if someone resisted PTG?
Resisted PTG. They don't want to feel. What do you mean?
According to the question, yeah, because he is felt hopeless, but the people around this person, they want him to grow, to go out of this situation, but the person himself or herself resisted the PTG because he is still stuck in the state of misery.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, if people don't want to grow, that's a pity, but we cannot force them to grow. You have to choose for growth and for the process that leads to that growth. So we cannot pull someone and say you have to grow. That's not possible. And most of the time it doesn't help. And then people, well, when they are forced to do something they don't want, that doesn't work.
Yeah, but what if the people around this person, they want to help him? What can they do?
Yeah, listen to listen to his story. That's very important. And when they listen to the story that the person tells them, listen particularly to what strengths they hear in his story. There are always strengths in people, always talents, always things people are doing very good. And there are also very small steps forwards. So listen to that strengths, to that capacities, to those very small steps forward, and give feedback on that, so that people feel finer when they have positive feedback. So that is very important.
Thank you. I'm curious if this is what the PTG coaching does.
No, not only that, but that is a very important thing. We also have to learn people how to react to all the emotions, how to what kind of emotions they can have, how the environment is reacts, and how their body is reacts on all kind of stress. So it's a very broad subject, in fact, but also focus on strengths, in fact, is very important. Yes, that's right.
Yes, yeah. Thank you very much. And yeah, great answer. The person asked this question, they say thank you very much. And let's see the fourth question. Next question. 大家如果有什么问题的话，现在还可以继续提问啊，大家可以把问题打在聊天框里。Okay, let's see the next question. Are there any signs that suggest a person might be experiencing PTG?
Yeah, nice question. Yes, that is when people mention in their own development that there is some light, that they have another view on their own personality, that they identify, acknowledge new talents, that they get another view on their own personality. So all kind of positive things they see, also very small one, that are signs of growth.
Thank you. It's very clear. Thank you. 那我们就是看出一个人他正在经历这个 PDG 的话，其实你可以看他可能突然展现出可能不同的个性，然后展现出不同的不一样的才能，他的能力，有他的性格各方面都有不一样，都是朝着积极方向走的话，这个人他可能正在经历一个就是创伤后成长的过程，因为他经历了苦痛，然后慢慢的开始蜕变，然后更加积极的面对他的这个工作，他的生活。Thank you. Let's see another question. And yeah. how can individuals who are experiencing career burnout achieve PTG?
Well, that's an interesting question because my scientific research was about this subject.
Wow. Yeah.
So I know a lot about this. How they can do it by looking at that misery, and because burnout is a misery process, as a development process. That's the first step. And then you find out, why did I work so hard? What made me work so hard? There are also some goals that people have, or some patterns in their personality that are not their own patterns. They learned that they, for example, had parents who were very result orientated, and then people are also very result orientated, because that's a pattern they learn, but it's not who they are. So you have to look to yourself closely. What made my why did I work so hard? So hard that my body says, that's it. So, and if you find out that, you can get a clearer information of, who am I and what do I want in this life? Who am I and what do I want? That's one thing. Another thing is, people who have burnout, most of the time are very resilient people, but they misabused this resilience instead of using it. So you can also look at it as a positive thing. They have a lot of power, but the power uses them instead of they using the power.
Thank you. Yeah, I think this is a question that many people are concerned about, because in today's society, people are very suffering high stress in the workplace. Yeah. Thank you. 关于这个
In
职
Europe,
业
in Europe it's the same. A lot of people with burnout.
Yeah, thank you. 那关于这个，如果是大家处于这个职业倦怠期，我想这个也是很多人现在经历的问题。我们职业倦怠期该怎么办？如何实现这个创伤后成长，就是这个 PTG。那这个首先大家就是把这个痛苦要把它当成是一个发展的过程。第二个呢是你要弄清楚你为什么就是觉得工作的这么累，因为你可能是基于你的目标，但也可能是基于一些你可能就是心理方面的一些你的认知方面的可能一些问题，比如说你这么做你要达成目标，可能并不是说是你真正自己想期望的，可能是别人赋予给你的，比如说你可能受到一些比如说父母带来的影响，他们可能是期望你就是带来某种结果，是结果性导向的，但这并不是你自己真正的一个认知一个期望。那你呢就是这个时候你要对自己有一个剖析，认真的审视自己，就是我是谁，然后我想要什么啊，让你的身体，同时也通过你的身体去感受你的这个答案。那你要把这个你的痛苦，你要转变一种思维去看，就是让它变成你的充满就是力量的东西，然后这样呢然后再去实现就是你的这个蜕变，这个成长。Okay, thank you. Okay, maybe let's see another question here. Is PTG a long-term phenomenon, or does it tend to be temporary? I think it may be asking that the influence of PTG the impact is long term or just temporarily?
No, it's long term. It's in fact that is it's a very transformative process. From catter to pillow, from pillar, how do we say it? From pillar to caterfly, how do we say it? I have a look at it. Well, it's very transformative, and it's not going back. From caterpillar to, oh, I have a sentence in that, but I don't know exactly. I have to look at.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, from caterpillar to butterfly. That is what it is. So you don't. It's a long-term phenomenon. You get such a good view at who you really are. You will have a sort of broadening your identity in such a way that there will not be a way. There's not a way back.
Thank you。那这个 PTG 啊，它的所带来的影响呢是长期的，就是当你如果说后面你还会可能经历一些痛苦的时候呢，你能够就是更好的，就是有一个在自我意识比较强的情况下，能够实现这个创伤后的成长。Thank you, and let's see the last question. Okay. After experiencing a period of depression, what strategies can be used to achieve PTG?
It's a nice question. And the first thing, well, I will react on the word depression, because in our society, the starting point seems to be that we always have to feel good, and that's impossible. But because of that, well, environment wants us to be okay and to be positive, etc. And most people then suppress their emotions. And if we do that a lot, a depression will follow later in time. So the depression most of the times is caused by that people had to do with misery in their life, and they didn't digest their emotions good enough. So what we can do is, when we have to deal with a depression, we have to look at why are we so depressed, and handle the emotions, digest our emotions. That is very important. And then we're free again. And then we can also find out, why didn't we digest the emotions on the moment we had to deal with misery? And that is the learning curve in this, because we can learn how to deal with our emotions, and that is grow. So you learn about yourself, about your own emotional processing, and that is very interesting, and it's also grow.
Thank you. Maybe it's important that people should raise their awareness of their emotions, because we can see that many people, they are stuck in their emotions and they didn't realize what their emotions are, or the real emotions are. Yeah, maybe they look angry, but actually they are very sad, but nobody can see that, even themselves. Yeah.
That is exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you very much. And great. Thank you for your wonderful presentation again, and thank you for bringing such a great topic, post-traumatic growth. It's a topic that worth exploring and worth to be known by more people. As I hope it will be reach out to more people in China and even to around the world. And it should at least as famous as PTSD. Yeah.
I agree fully. Thank you very much. I'm honored to be here and to do this presentation and answer your questions.
So thank you for your support for EMCC China. Thank you, and I have good best wishes to your research on PTG, and we'd love to be part of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye bye. Have a good rest of the day.
You too.
Bye bye. 那我们非常感谢我们 Great 女士刚才精彩的演讲。那我们这里最后呢，也再做一下这个下期的预告。那么下期的预告呢，是在5月8号的晚上7点到8点。那下期的嘉宾呢是来自瑞士的丽斯女士，她是来自英国的，她是瑞士，她是 ICF 英国分会的会长，也是 ICF 的大师级教练，也是 EMCC 的大师级教练 ，EMCC 认证的督导。那她给我们带来的话题是教练之道，重塑商业挑战应对方式。那对下一期讲座感兴趣的话，大家可以点击我们左上角关注我们，然后进行预约。那本场讲座呢，我们也会给大家提供一个回放，视频的回放，还有相应的学习资料。那大家可以也是左上角关注我们，然后获得本次讲座的这个学习资料以及这个视频的回放。